In order to be an effective leader as an engineer, you need to be able to interact with people. You have to build relationships with people, engage with people. But are these skills that you can learn as an engineer? Or are these the type of skills that you either have or you don't? In this week's episode of the Civil Engineering CEO, I have with me Joey Hudnall. Joey is the president and CEO at Neel-Schaffer. And Joey's going to talk about how an engineer can develop these skill sets and how you might start doing it. Before we jump in, a word from our sponsor, Pennoni. Since Pennoni's founding more than 5 decades ago, their clients trust Pennoni's commitment to elevating the impact of projects in the communities they serve. By partnering with their clients, they establish relationships that create trust and longevity. Pennoni approaches the start of every project as the beginning of a collaboration. With the rapid change in technology, Pennoni's clients know they are getting innovative methods in delivering quality services for smart, sustainable, and resilient solutions. Pennoni is relentless in their aim to bring fresh perspective and new technologies. Pennoni measures achievement in innovation, efficiency, and excellence. Its milestones are bigger than any one project, and every project affects the community, no matter how large or small. For more information, visit Pennoni.com. That's Pennoni.com. All right, now I'm excited to welcome my guest onto the show for today. Joey Hudnall is the president and CEO at Neel-Schaffer. He's also a licensed professional engineer. Joey, welcome to the Civil Engineering CEO.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm glad to be here and glad to participate.
Yeah, for sure. No, excited to get the chance to chat with you a little bit. So to get us started off, Joey, tell us a little bit about Neel-Schaffer, where you're located, what services you offer, about how many employees you have.
Well, first off, I'll give you a real quick backdrop on the company. We're still relatively young, Anthony. We actually turned 40 years old this year, so it's an exciting year for us. And it was started in 1983 by Hibbett Neel and Gorman Schaffer. And they had a vision when they started out of Jackson, Mississippi, with some 20 employees to be a Southeastern firm, multidiscipline firm, and an employee-owned firm. And we're now over 500 full-time equivalents. We ramp up and down with a subsidiary we have in the emergency management industry, but 500 full-time folks, and we got 38 offices across the Southeast. So we're in 8 states and doing work in about 10 in the Southeast.
That's awesome. And from someone who founded and building a business, I know that 40 years, I mean, that's a big number. I mean, it's not easy to build and grow any business. So that's a very impressive number. So congratulations to your firm on that. That's awesome.
Well, kudos for them for taking out a loan on their house and starting it. And our employees wouldn't be doing what they're doing now. And it took a lot of effort from a lot of people. They started it, but I can't thank the employees enough. I mean, there's so many people we could thank and so many events that kind of got us to where we are, Anthony. So
yeah, for sure. So Joey, tell me a little bit about your kind of personal career trajectory. I mean, we talk to a lot of civil engineering professionals and everyone has different ideas of where they want to go in their careers. Did you have a goal of becoming a high-level executive? Take us through your career.
Oh, the quick answer is no. And sometimes it's hard to talk about your story, but my story just really kind of evolved, Anthony. First off, I knew nothing but engineering growing up. My father was a civil engineer, had a practice in a small town in Mississippi. I worked for him every summer on survey crews and really whatever he asked or wanted me to do. And so going into civil engineering was just kind of this is what I do and this is what I'm going to do. So I went to school, graduated in civil engineering, went to work for him, and honestly thought that would be my career, working with my father, helping him run a business, hopefully helping him grow the business. And really kind of fate just kind of happened. My father became ill, had he had early onset Alzheimer's. So I ended up having to take over his company at a very early age. I really didn't know what I was doing, honestly. Hired a professional engineer because I was not a professional engineer at that time, and just kind of kept on plugging along. We did a lot of business in the area where I grew up, Columbus, Mississippi, and it just kind of evolved. And Neel-Schaffer had more expertise in some water, wastewater, and we had mutual clients, and we began working together, really just doing different types of jobs together. And actually, a client of ours pulled us together, Anthony, as mayor of Columbus, was friends with Gorman Schaefer and kind of pulled us together. And I ended up selling my father's firm, which was a very difficult thing to do. But it ended up being a really good thing for my mother at the time. My brother was not in the business. He's an engineer, but he wasn't in the business. And then it just kind of started from there. I ran their office there in Columbus, and just through really a series of events. It's kind of hard to explain, but really when something happened, an opportunity popped up, I walked through the door, offered to help, offered to serve, and it just kind of went from there. So it was really nothing planned as much as just really a series of events, and taking the opportunity when it presented itself and making sure I matched skill sets with that opportunity, honestly. So there were some events that happened. After Katrina hit, it really changed the landscape of our company, and it presented the opportunity to kind of step up and do some more things for the company, which I did. And then it just kind of snowballed a little bit from there. So.
That's great. And I appreciate that. I know, like you said, it's not always easy kind of talking through your own story, but what's interesting about it, and the reason I like to ask, is because I don't think there's a straight line A to B for, if you want to become a executive in a civil engineering firm or a high level professional, just because there are so many turns and shifts and transitions along the way that happen. But I think your story, again, just goes to show that it's really about, taking on different chances and opportunities as they arise in your career, and then going from there, right? Like, you had the opportunity with Neel-Schaffer, you took it, obviously, then that built something new. And then, like you said, Katrina's maybe another transition point, something happens there. And so really it's about being kind of open to opportunities in your career, and then kind of taking them and seeing what you can do with those opportunities. And, it could look different it probably does look different for most people, quite frankly. But it's interesting to hear how you have to just embrace opportunities as they come and see what comes from them, because that seems to be the answer a lot of times to these questions.
Absolutely. And I think we're all a little nervous of change from time to time. I think change can be a really good thing, and I think a lot of times you just need to lean into that change and embrace it. And that's hard. It's hard for engineers to do, Anthony. It's hard for anybody to do, but I think it's important. If people want to advance in their career and they want to do more, they got to put fear aside a little bit and embrace change. So,
Yeah, no, for sure. Change will happen. It's like, even in all the project management training we do, one of the first things we tell the PMs is, tell you right now, you can write it down in big letters, change is going to happen on your projects. So you got to learn how to deal with it. And really, it goes for life. It goes for leadership. It really goes for everything, quite frankly. And so change management is something that we all have to deal with. So, Joey, I know you and I have had the chance to talk a few times now, and I know one of the words that I hear you use a lot is the word serve. I try to serve, I show up, I try to serve. And I'm always interested in thinking about someone's kind of management or leadership styles. And the way I usually pitch the question is, like, if I ask kind of your team, what your management or leadership style is, how do you think they would describe it? Or how would you like for them to describe it?
Well, you just use the word. I would love for it to come out of there, and I hope this is what they would say, is that I have a servant leadership. That's really truly what I want to be able to do, is to serve. Is I have skill sets and I have a lot of weaknesses, and I just want to use the skill sets to better the company down the road. Hopefully, through servant leadership, I hope they'll say that my leadership was transformative, and help to transform the company and move it forward in a positive way. So, again, it's hard to talk about yourself,
Yeah.
but that's the word serve is something that's important to me. So,
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I think that is good to have a clear goal in terms of, what you want your leadership style to be. And just, I used the word before because I notice you say it often, and I think it's great because it seems like you're really focused on that, serving your people, which we're going to get into in a little bit more here. But let me ask you another question, because obviously there's been lots of stuff that has gone on the past few years, like COVID. There's been, throughout the years, like Katrina, like big things that happen in the world, quite frankly, not just in the world of engineering. And someone like yourself, who's a leader in the firm, I think when these things happen, people look at you and say, "Oh, let's see how Joey's going to respond to this. What is Joey going to tell us about this as one of our leaders in the firm?" So, how do you kind of approach those situations so you're not kind of overreacting or underreacting, or just understanding that people are looking at you for that guidance? How, like, what is that mindset like for you? How do you think about those situations and approach them?
well, first off, overreacting and underreacting, I think it's something that you have to learn over time. I think you have to have some failures along the way to really understand how you need to react. You know, I had a colleague tell me one time, Anthony, Joe, it's never as good as you seem, but it's also never as bad as you've seen, as it seems. And it's so true. And really, honestly, what you do is you listen a lot. It takes patience, I think. What you also want to do is, in anything, you want to communicate and collaborate. I can tell you right now, I don't have all the answers. We'll never have all the answers. But typically in your team, you're going to have individuals that have great ideas and great paths forward. And if you collaborate appropriately, you're going to make the best decisions you can. The other thing I would say is, you don't need to be scared to make a decision when a decision needs to be made. They're not always going to be correct decisions. And you can't be scared of failure. But during COVID, it was a very collaborative approach. It was very deliberate, and I use the word during COVID is we got to be very intentional in how we approach things. And we did. I'm not going to say we made all the best decisions, but we made decisions, and we moved that needle for the company, and we worked through it. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, Anthony, but
yeah, no, I think going back to something you said that I think is really important is nobody has all the answers, but I think knowing that that's okay sometimes takes time in your career. Like you said, it takes some experience, it takes a lot of listening, because I think as engineers, by nature, our job is to solve problems. So, especially I see this with less experienced engineers, is that if a client asks me a question, I need to have the answer. And if I don't have it, I'm going to look really bad, right? But I think as time goes on, and this happens for me too, even in what we do in our business, if I don't know the answer, I'm going to say, Joey, listen, that's a really good question. I don't have the answer right now, but let me do a little research. Let me get back to you. I want to make sure I'm giving you the right information. That little response can take a lot of years to be comfortable to be able to say that to someone. And, it could be dangerous in our world we live in, because someone's on a project site and they're getting pressured for information from a contractor, from other people around them. Again, these are things I think that come with experience. But I think, to your point, it's really knowing that it's not just knowing you don't have the answers, but knowing that it's okay to take some time to get them, I think is something that can be learned and is important.
You are spot on, and there's not a science to that. It has to be learned, and it's okay not to know something. And you said something just a second ago, Anthony, and it just resonated with me. Is as engineers, we like to solve problems. That's what we do. I mean, we're geared to solve the client's problems, and all too often too, I think we can solve all our own problems, even if it's not engineering problems. And my point to that is, I think sometimes you got to look in the mirror and say, well, wait a minute, I'm not an expert in that. We should engage somebody to help us with that. And as engineers, sometimes I think it's hard to do that, because sometimes I guess, even myself, I feel like, well, I know how to approach this, but I might not be the best one to approach it. So.
Yeah. And I think those are lessons learned over time. But at the same time, hopefully when we do these interviews and when we get to talk to some people like yourself and we keep reinforcing some of these concepts, it's helpful for people to pick up along the way. Because I know, sometimes I still struggle with that too, man. Like you said, you want to drive it, you want to drive the project, you want to move it forward, you want to get the answers, but you also want to do it the right way. So we talked about COVID a little bit there, and obviously it was a big thing, obviously worldwide, but from an industry standpoint, the way we work in terms of people being more remote, then people kind of in a hybrid situation coming back. Some people are back, some people aren't. How did you navigate that as a company in terms of, just dealing with understanding who's comfortable coming in, who's doing different things, but we still need to stay productive. We still need to serve our clients. What did that look like? You mentioned it was a collaborative approach. Was it just like keep continuing to take the heartbeat of things? How did that work?
It was a daily grind, to be honest with you. Really brought in our leadership team, even reached further down into our offices, really getting a feel for what's happening in different areas. When you have this many, we have 38 offices, not every single office is going to be the same, and not every situation is the same. We have offices in more rural areas, we have offices in major metroplexes, so everything looks and feels a little bit different. So you really need to understand what's going on, boots on the ground, in my opinion, and not make overarching decisions just based on what you're seeing and hearing. You need to really engage your people. We did that, and we did it starting out daily, and we were very fluid in our decisions that we made. First thing was to get work from home up as quick as we could. Our IT department did a tremendous job. I can't say enough about what they did. We were up and rolling. We were already doing a little work from home in different areas, Anthony, but it went from 0 to 100 really quick. And got production back up and going, and then through Teams and Zoom, got our communication really rolling, and it really just became a weekly communication on what are you seeing now, what's coming down the pipe, what are the new regs, and just making sure we stayed ahead of the curve, I guess, a little bit. But it was really an intense communication and very stressful. I think anybody in our industry and any industry would tell you this was just an extremely stressful time. But our team was real resilient, and we came together. Now that I say that, we actually came up with a motto during COVID that we live by. It was stay safe, remain resilient, and focus forward. And we really did that. And we came together and we moved on. And then you continue to deal with some of what COVID created, some of the platforms that are there in place, like work from home. But again, it's like we were talking about earlier on change. I feel like as a company, we came together. It gave us an opportunity to be more of one company. and allowed us to honestly prosper. We took a bad situation and turned it into as good as we could turn it into. So
Yeah, and I think that point you made about a stressful time, that was what I found to be interesting is some businesses or business lines during COVID, they just lost their business. Unfortunately, it just had to stop, whatever, movie theaters, restaurants, whatever the case may be. But what I found about the civil world, since a lot of our clients are civil engineering firms, is that they still remained very busy. All the projects were still going. In fact, some roadway projects were going even more than normal because there was no roads on, there was no cars on the road. So they were
that's
like, let's
right.
amp, like a DOT saying, let's get these projects done we haven't been able to get
That's
done.
right.
So it's almost like your workload is remaining the same, but you're still trying to manage things now in a completely different way than you ever managed them. So that's what I saw in the civil side that made it even more stressful, is that, don't get me wrong, some projects slowed down, some companies slowed down a little bit, but predominantly people were still going. Um, and I guess, like, going forward now, is this something where, like, Neel-Schaffer is pretty much back operational as where you were before? Is it still a little bit of a blend? How does that going to be looking going forward?
It's a little bit of a blend. I go back to every office is a little bit different. We had a lot of offices, they're just ready to get back as quick as they could, and so they did, as soon as it was safe. That's we accommodated that. And then we have some offices in some of your major metropolitan areas where, honestly, work from home probably makes some sense for these individuals, just from a commute standpoint and just a quality of life standpoint. And the other thing, I go back a little bit and think a little bit about what you said on how the civil engineering industry was just able to continue on and actually move projects along quicker. And it was almost an adrenaline rush too, to be honest with you, which really, really concerned me, because if you think about it, if you're coming into work, you've got some break from work. You get in, get your day started, you get rolling, and you have some camaraderie with other people. But if you're working from home, you wake up and you go to work. And if you kind of think about it, if you could let that start consuming your life, so then there's not as much downtime as that individual really needs. And that was worrisome to me. Even though, everybody talked about utilization going up and the metrics being better, well, what can come along with that, Anthony, is burnout. And so it's but the platform has changed. Yeah, it's a blend for us. And we continue to embrace it. You just got to manage it a little different. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, I personally, I like the idea of going to an office every day to work, just because it is nice to have some separation, because you work from home every day and it just, everything blends together and you don't have like an identity kind of in one way or the other, and it could become a little tricky to navigate. And I think, to your point about burnout, it can become a real thing. And we did some work with some firms on helping them kind of with the hybrid work environment. And really what it was about was teaching people how to work from home. Like, get up from your desk and walk around every once in a
that's
while.
right.
You can't sit there all day, get outside, get fresh air, talk to people. So I agree with you. It's not as easy as some people. Hey, it's great, I get to work from home. It can be good in some regards, but
That's
like
right.
everything in life, there's a little bit of a balance there. So I want to talk a little bit now about people and the idea of investing in your people, caring about your people. I know from my conversations with you and other people at Neel-Schaffer that you're passionate about this, that your people mean a lot to you there, and you put a lot of effort into this. And so my first question for you is, how did that philosophy, is that just you personally? You've always been a real people person. Talk to me about your whole thought process on that.
Well, yes, I actually have always been I love to be around people. I draw energy from people. I love to learn about people's experiences, and there's always something to learn from somebody and their experience. So I've always been drawn to people, but probably as much as anything, Anthony, if I think about it, my father instilled a lot of this in me. Growing up in a small community, you also get surrounded by people that really invest in you as well. And I think, from my father's investment in me, and he had expectations that were always pretty high, but as I watched how he managed, he had a heart of gold, and he was just he would really pour into people when they needed help, and he always spent time to understand personally what was going on with somebody. You don't want to cross over and get too much in people's personal lives, but it's important to know where people are, and he was really good at that, and I probably picked up on that. And the other thing that he just instilled in me and my brothers, do the right thing. At the end of the day, you got to do the right thing. And, and to me, doing the right thing is pouring into your people, pouring not just professional knowledge and training from a technical standpoint or a management standpoint, but, pour into them personally. See where they are in life and see how you can help them. I just think it's, we spend most of our life working. So, my hope is that, wherever people are working, they're getting something out of it besides a paycheck. They're getting some fulfillment. And I think, and it takes investment. It takes being very intentional with people. And sometimes, as engineers, we have difficulty, getting on that personal level. But it's always been a passion of mine. I'm that guy. my wife and my two boys make fun of me, Anthony. I'm that guy. If I get into an Uber, I am going to know everything there is to know about the Uber driver before I leave. So, and it just drives them nuts. So.
That's great. I'm laughing because we took the kids out to dinner the other night, and I'm the one at the restaurant who's talking to the waiter or waitress about, where you from? What do you do? What sports teams you like? And my son's like, Dad, why are you asking this person all these questions? And I said, I'm having a conversation. That's what life's about. Kids today, they're on their phones or whatever. I'm like, got to have a conversation. You got to talk to people. But really what I like about this in general is, and this isn't just specific to civil engineering, but I think in the corporate world, there's a lot of talk out there like, hey, we've got to invest in our people. But I think sometimes it's an easy thing to like talk the talk, but people don't necessarily like walk the walk. I mean, anyone could say out there on their website, hey, we invest in our people. They want to hire people. They want to get people interested in their company. But I agree with you that it's not something can be like a superficial thing. It takes time. You got to talk to people. You got to engage with people. And obviously in a company your size, you're able to talk with a certain number of people. And then if you kind of instill that in maybe some of the managers across the company, then hopefully they're talking to their people, right? And it's kind of a whole culture thing. And, I've always had the philosophy myself of asking the question to people, how can our company help you achieve your goals? Right. I think it's like a little bit of a flip. Most companies are thinking like, how can our employees help us be profitable, help us grow? I like flipping that on its head and saying, how can we help you achieve your goals? Because quite frankly, I mean, listen, especially in civil engineering, people could work at a lot of different places because a lot of companies are busy. Right. So I feel like that connection and that idea of, hey, listen, you're helping the company grow. The company's going to help you grow too. Right. I think that's such an important connection because like you said, at the end of the day, people are in it for more than a paycheck. I mean, people want to grow in their careers. They want to become, experts. They want to become professionals. They want to, represent communities and projects. And I think if you can help them grow in that way, it's a family. I mean, it has to be a family. Then they're a part of a family. Like you said, you're probably with these people more than you're with your family sometimes.
That's right.
So I just think that that's such an important aspect of it. And I guess the one question I would have for you around this is, because I'm sure people are thinking that, is it something you can learn?
Yeah, that is a absolutely great question. And I don't know that I have the answer to that. Go back to what we talked about earlier. I could sit here and probably give you my thoughts, but I'm not sure I've got the answer to it. I think some of it is driven by personality, and who you are as a person. I think, all in all, people really all people care, but I just think some people, what's going on with these individuals is their issue, not our issue. And
Right.
but it really is, not to, again, not to say, you want to dive too deep, but you do want people to feel comfortable enough around you to open up. And I know I'm not answering your question because I don't have an answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I do think, one thing I have done with managers is, because this is something I do when I go to offices, I will take the time out and walk to individual offices and sit down. And it doesn't matter if it's a technician or if somebody working in survey, just to have a small conversation, just to see what's going on. And sometimes I will take the managers with me and say, look, let's do a little walk around management and just have some conversations. And hopefully, I guess what I'm hoping out of something like that is they say, okay, there is some benefit to doing this, and maybe they get in a groove of doing it. But I don't know that it can be totally taught. But
yeah. Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I don't know that it could be totally taught either, but I do think, going back to what you just said, that may be part of the answer. Just making sure that you're taking the time to connect with people and talk to people on a regular basis as a leader. I mean, that's a starting point at least. And I know for some people, someone, Joey Hudnall may be more comfortable than Anthony Fasano walking around and talking to people, at least initially. But if Anthony Fasano does it enough and starts to get to know his people and his leaders, then he gets more comfortable. But it's being intentional, like you said earlier, and creating the space for those conversations in a world that we live in, where everyone's calendars are jammed up from A to Z. If you go to an office as a leader, walking around, going visiting some of the recent grads, sitting down. I mean, you mentioned to me in one of our calls, you have like a younger professionals, event or retreat that you do at Neel-Schaffer. Perfect opportunity for yourself and other leaders to take the time to sit down with people and talk to them. So I think the answer, and it's not a perfect answer, but the answer is, at a minimum, you've got to create the space to be able to have the conversations to get to
that's
know
right.
people.
That's right. That's a great way to put it. And the other thing you can do, Anthony, is, that might not be your strength. That might not be what you lean into, but I can guarantee you, in the organization as we grow, everybody's got different strengths, and there's somebody probably, that you're working with in that office or somewhere that has that strength. So there's an opportunity as a leader, if it's not your strength, to be a leader and say, how can you help me with this? You're good. I've noticed you're good at this. And to me, that's a real leadership trait, is recognizing where things need to be shored up, and not feeling like you got to do everything yourself. And then honestly, it probably presents another opportunity for somebody else in the company to grow and use their strengths and their traits. So
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I'm just thinking, when you said that, it's not that different from a family. Like, I'm thinking, we have 3 kids, right? My wife's better at doing certain things with the kids and having certain types of conversations, and I'm better at doing other things with them. And we kind of have that plan that, we kind of understand what our strengths are, and how we, do different things. And so, again, it's part of life, I guess, knowing what you're good at, knowing what you're not. And I think being a leader is getting help where you need it,
yep,
which is important, because, like you said, you can't expect every leader to have the same, let's say, people skill level. They're just not. Sometimes you have it, like you said, your father from a young age was kind of teaching you this and showing you this, and you were watching him do it. Someone else may not have had that opportunity, but that doesn't mean they can't be a great leader, but they may need help on certain things that maybe you don't need help on, and so on and so forth. So if you're out there and you're thinking to yourself, oh man, I want to be better with people, I'm not right now, there are things you could do to improve your people skills. That I know 100%, because we've helped a lot of people do that. But there are also things where you might say, Joey's better at this on my team, so I'm going to reach out to him, have a conversation, get him going on some of these conversations, and you could still achieve the goals that you want to achieve as managers and leaders. But I think ultimately, just circling back to where we started here, that connection with people is such a critical aspect of leadership, because you need to be able to connect with people and, yes, you want them to achieve their goals, but you also want them to be happy and coming to work
That's
every
right.
day. And
That's right.
to me, that's your responsibility as a leader.
Well, it goes back to, you just said it, and you said it very well, Anthony. I'll say it in a little different way. You just don't need to worry about your seat. You just need to worry about your service.
Right.
And you go back to how to serve, and you serve with your strengths. And, if somebody's sitting in the seat as a leader and that's not their service, you find somebody else that can serve. And it's pretty simple. And then next thing you know, it's just working together as a team, doing what we do,
Yeah. Yeah. So, Joey, this is a question that I get from engineers every so often, and I wanted to ask it of you, which is, I'm an engineer, I'm working in an organization. How can I make sure that I'm adding value to the organization that I'm working for? How do I know? How do I do that? How would you answer that to them?
Well, there's so many different answers to that. Obviously everybody has different strengths and different things. Some people lean more toward the technical side. Some people lean toward management. Some people will end up leaning toward leadership. So again, I think you gotta really focus on what you're strong at doing, and invest in that. And the company needs to invest in that. And, that's another thing is, I think as a company, you got to really recognize what people are good at doing, and not that you want to pigeonhole anybody. You want people to be fulfilled, but you do find out in where people are best suited, and you help them get there. You support them. So what I would say to any civil engineer is, realize what you want to do, invest in that. But more than anything, I would say you need to also put integrity and ethics first, because you can be the best technical engineer, you can be the best manager, you can be a really good leader, but if you're doing that without ethics and integrity, it's going to be all for naught at some point. So that would be my advice.
Do the right thing.
Do the right thing. Yeah, goes back to my father. Do the right thing.
So the last question I have for you, and I know that you seem to me that you're someone that really leads from, kind of from the heart, if you will, kind of, you kind of feel it out, and you do what you feel is good for your people. And, I'm sure you have a lot of leaders there that you work with on the decision-making process and things of that nature. But I'm just curious beyond that, if there's been any type of leadership influence, philosophy, authors, systems, or anything that you leaned on. I know sometimes we all read books and do things, but usually certain things stick out for us. Like you mentioned your father, you mentioned a couple others, the motto you created. Is there anything else that's been helpful for you in your leadership skill development?
Yeah. I reflect on a client of mine that eventually came to work for us. But he was in the DOT, taught me a lot about people, taught me a lot about conflict resolution. He poured a lot into me. He knew my father very well too. So I don't know if after my father became ill, he kind of took me under his wing and said, I'm gonna help this young man out. And but he taught me conflict resolution is something I can tell you, in anything we do in this business is you're going to have conflict. We mentioned it early on project management. You're going to have change. You're going to have conflict, and being able to deal with conflict in the right way is important. And he taught me a lot about that. His name was Paul Swindle. He retired not too terribly long ago, but he's he was a wonderful mentor for me. And I was so excited when he decided to come work for us, because he actually helped elevate what we've done as a firm while he's with us. But from a book standpoint, there is one book. I've read a lot of leadership books, and Anthony, I'm sure you have too. But this book really resonated with me. And the book is called Love Works. It's by Joel Manby. It's about his career as a CEO, 25-year career as a CEO. And by the title, you would think, well, is it kind of a kumbaya type? And it's really not. It truly is how to love on people, make difficult decisions, but you can still do it in a loving manner. And it's just a great read. It's a short read. I've read it like 3 times. I go back to it in certain situations, and it resonates extremely well. Matter of fact, Anthony, I keep copies. I'm gonna send you one. So
oh wow, that's great. That's great. I was gonna get it for sure. So that's awesome. Well, listen, Joey, I want to thank you for spending some time with us here. I really enjoyed the opportunity to get to chat with you. We've talked a few times, but every time I talk with you, I feel like I'm learning a little bit about, how to lead people. I think that's something in today's world that is very difficult to do, but very critical, especially in the civil engineering world, because the terms project management to me always were a little misleading, because you're missing the word people. And the big part of being successful in projects, which means being successful as a firm, means you need to have the ability to lead people, interact with people, and really help people. I think, to your point, help people grow. I mean, your people grow, then everybody grows, and everyone kind of can have fun together and enjoy their careers. So once again, Joey Hudnall, licensed professional engineer, president and CEO at Neel-Schaffer. Joey, thanks so much for some time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anthony, for having me. I've enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Joey. He is a special leader, in my opinion. He has the ability to really interact with people, and I hope that some of the tips that he gave can help you to get better at this all-important skill set. Please consider subscribing to our channel here. We put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineers become better managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.